Have you ever wondered what the real difference is between just doing something and truly, deeply believing in it? Well, in Islam, that's a central idea we're going to break down today. We're going beyond the practices you might already know to understand something called Iman, the inner faith that acts as the real anchor for everything else.
So to really get this, we've got to understand a crucial distinction. On one side, you have Islam. That's the outward stuff, the actions, the what you do. You can think of it as a horizontal dimension, connecting people in a community. But then there's Iman, and that is the inner faith, the deep conviction. It's the why behind all the actions. This is the vertical dimension, that personal, one-on-one connection between you and God.
Now, a lot of people have heard about the 5 pillars of Islam, right? Things like prayer and fasting, but those are the what of the faith. They're the actions. Iman is what pushes us to go deeper, to explore that why. It's that vertical connection to the divine that's supposed to give every single action its real meaning.
And get this means someone could, technically, go through all the motions of the practices of Islam without actually having any genuine belief inside. Iman is the thing that separates just going through the motions from a truly sincere act of devotion. It's that inner conviction that turns a physical act into a spiritual one. It is the fundamental why. So what is this faith, this Iman, supposed to feel like? Well, the answer is kind of hidden right there in the word itself. The Arabic language here is incredibly revealing. You see, the word Iman comes from the Arabic root amina, which means to be safe or secure. Now, that tells you something really profound. Faith isn't just about believing a list of ideas. It's meant to be an anchor, something that gives you real psychological security in a world that's often filled with chaos and uncertainty. And we totally see this play out in our own lives, right? I mean, you would not want to go into surgery if you had zero faith in your doctor. You'd be an absolute wreck. In that same way, Iman is seen as that psychological anchor that gives you security against all the turbulence that life throws at you. This link between faith and hope is actually so basic, you can even observe it in the animal kingdom. There was this study where rats that had been saved from drowning before, well, the next time they swam for way, way longer before giving up. They developed a kind of hope, a primal belief that rescue was possible, and that belief gave them the will to just hang on. Okay, so if faith provides security, what exactly is that faith placed in? The core articles of Iman really focus on a few key things: God, the messages sent down to humanity, and the unseen reality that exists beyond our 5 senses.
The absolute heart of Iman, the very center, is belief in God. And this is all captured in one simple but incredibly powerful declaration, the Shahada. La ilaha illallah. Now, it's often translated as, there is no God but God, but the real magic is in how that phrase is actually built.
It's a 2-step process. The first part, la ilaha, is a negation. It says there is no God. This is about wiping the slate clean, denying all the false things we might worship or any other so-called ultimate realities. Only after you do that, only after that negation does the second part come, illallah, which means accept God. That's the affirmation. The point is, you have to negate everything that's false before you can truly affirm what is real.
But, affirming one ultimate God brings up a huge philosophical question. If God is totally separate from everything he created, then how can God also be felt as intimately close and personal? Islamic thought dives right into this paradox with 2 really important ideas: transcendence and immanence. So you can think of transcendence as speaking to God's otherness, his absolute justice, and even his wrath. It's sometimes compared to a distant father figure. But on the flip side, you have immanence, which is all about God's closeness, his compassion, and his overwhelming mercy, often likened to a mother. And what's amazing is that the Arabic word for mercy, rahma, comes from the same root as the word for womb, which suggests this nurturing, all-encompassing compassion.
So belief in God is the core, but Iman doesn't stop there. It also requires belief in the channels that God used to communicate with humanity. This includes believing in an unseen reality of angels, who are described as beings made of light, a whole series of revealed books sent for our guidance, including the Torah, the Psalms, and the Gospel, with the Quran being the final one, and a long line of messengers, or prophets, sent to every single community on earth to deliver this message.
So what's the opposite of all this faith? You might think it's just disbelief, but the concept is way more nuanced than that. The Arabic term is kufr, and its root meaning is to cover or to conceal. This suggests that a person who engages in kufr isn't just someone who doesn't know the truth, it's someone who is actively covering up a truth they already know deep down. And that reframes disbelief. It's not just rejection, it's an act of deep ingratitude.
All right, so with that whole framework of faith and gratitude in our minds, let's dive into the final articles of faith. And these, well, they tackle some of the biggest, heaviest questions we all have. Destiny, the problem of evil, and what happens when this whole journey is over.
And this leads us straight into one of the oldest, toughest questions in all of theology. You've heard it before. If God is all good, he wouldn't want evil to exist. And if he's all powerful, he could stop it. So why is there so much suffering in the world? The Islamic tradition comes at this by not trying to define what evil is, but by defining what it isn't.
Instead of seeing evil as something that God created, the idea here is that evil is simply the absence of good. It's just like darkness, right? Darkness isn't a thing itself, it's just what happens when there's no light. So in this view, a good act is one where a divine quality like mercy or justice is present. An evil act, then, is one where those divine qualities are simply missing.
And this whole perspective really hinges on the humility of recognizing our limited human viewpoint. As this verse from the Quran puts it, what we might think is terrible for us or great for us in the short term could be the complete opposite in the grand divine plan, a plan that only God truly understands.
Ultimately, this life on Earth is framed as just one temporary stage in a much, much longer journey. In fact, the Arabic word for this worldly life, dunya, literally means the lowest one. It's seen as a test, a kind of training ground, before the soul moves on to its final destination.
And this journey of the soul is seen as having some pretty clear stages. It starts with our life here, in this world, which is followed by death when the soul leaves the body. After that comes an in-between state, which then leads to the final resurrection on the Day of Judgment. And it's on that day that every single soul is brought to account before it reaches its permanent final destination.
So, the climax of this whole journey is that day of judgment, a complete and total reckoning, where every soul is held accountable, not just for their actions, but for the intentions behind them. But even in this moment of ultimate justice, there's a principle that's always emphasized, that God's mercy is overwhelmingly vast, and in the end, it will always prevail over his wrath.
And this leaves us with a really powerful final thought to chew on. If evil isn't some active force out there to be fought, but it's simply a void, an absence of goodness, compassion, and justice, what does that mean for us? How does that change our personal responsibility to be the ones who actually fill that void?